i-ratify na natin yan. But let's protect our farmers.
Sir, sa oil excise tax,
Yung oil excise tax, I think there are other ways to handle the increase and the disturbances that we are having in terms of the petroleum products that we are importing. We can support those areas na tinamaan kaagad ng pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Number one there was transport. And this is important because transport is going to be critical in the resurgence of the economy. And the reason I say that is because nakikita na natin, there are what we keep talking about supply chain problems that have arisen post-pandemic sa ibang lugar. I don't consider us post-pandemic yet. I think we are still hopefully at the tail end. But nonetheless, nakikita na natin in other countries na yun ang ginagawa na nagkakaproblema doon sa transport situation. Because COVID changed everything, we tried to go back nung bumubukas ang mga ekonomiya. Sinubukan nating bumalik doon sa dating gawin. Hindi na maaari yun. We have to do it in a different way. And we have to be more creative and more aware of what the future global economy is going to look like. So in terms of oil excise tax, I think we still have to look at that very well. If there is a commensurate, return to somehow deferring the collection of the excise tax, what will be siyempre, the government needs the money. Mahirap ang gobyerno sa pondo ngayon. The government needs the money. Pero kung talagang makikita naman, may ano naman yan eh. Pag sinabi mo, tanggalin natin yung excise tax o bawasan natin yung excise tax, ano yung magiging effect doon? Talaga bang worth it ba na mawala yung pondo o yung income ng gobyerno? Kasi mas magiging maganda naman ang effect sa ekonomiya and makabawi tayo. So we'll have to study that. It's still a cost-benefit analysis. It's not simple, but that's what we will have to do. But of course, that will be one of the areas that will be under intense study in the first few weeks, because we really have to see our fiscal policy, how we handle it, and we have to be more analytical in the way that we impose new taxes or withdraw old taxes or amend the tax structure to see that there will be, as I said, a commensurate advantage perhaps in another part of the economy. But kailangan meron naman talagang may balance naman. So kasi pag nawala ka agad dyan, wala naman tayong pangbigay ng tupad, wala na tayong pangbigay ng ayuda, kailangan pa rin ng tao yan. But if the economy is ready, kahit kunin mo yan, may trabaho na, then perhaps we can think about it.
Thank you, MJ. Mr. Meridian.
PBBM, sir.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our debt stands at 13 trillion right now. May pinropose po ang Department of Finance na fiscal consolidation plan that
Correct.
details measures for revenue generation para matugunan tong utang na to. It includes deferment of personal income tax reduction, limiting VAT exemptions, and excise tax.
Yes.
Where do you stand on these tax measures?
I think that's an examination we really have to undertake. I mean, just for what I hear from legal practitioners, we have to codify our tax. Kasi yung tax natin, it has evolved over many administrations. And what I will try to apply is that there will be hindi lang yung kuha tayo dito sa syntax, kuha tayo dito sa oil, kuha tayo dito sa housing, kuha tayo dito sa cooperative. hindi, kailangan talaga may plano tayo. So gagawin natin yung plano natin, and the fiscal policy is going to follow that. Now, in my discussions with our legislators yesterday, we are trying to create some fiscal space so that to reduce the load on ordinary citizens, and maybe move the load up, the tax load up, and there are also distribution of wealth implications to that, which are very, very important. It's one of the areas that I think we have to work on very, very hard. The distribution of wealth into the Philippines has not been very equitable, and so that's something that that the fiscal policy will hope to balance, achieve a better balance. So we must approach all of these things. The economy is a living thing, and you cannot just look at one area without trying to anticipate what the real effect will be for the entire economy and for. So we have to, the point I'm making is that we have to have an economic recovery plan, and the fiscal policy will follow that. What areas will we encourage? What comes out off the top of my mind is MSMEs kagad. Bawasan na natin, or we give them a holiday, tax amnesty, tax holiday. Let's study. We're studying that now, because that's the only way that I can see. We do microfinancing even in the private sector. We want them to come back because the 62% of our employees are in MSMEs. The agriculture also, yung ating ayuda, the fertilizer that we buy, urea, is petroleum-based in terms of pricing, and it's imported. And it has gotten to such a severe situation that there are farmers now who just don't plant. Kasi if urea is at what? 2,000 pesos. Sabi nga, hindi naman kami kikita eh. So, huwag na lang. Di ba? We'll do something else. Mangingisda lang kami, or we'll do something else. And that doesn't bode well for our plans for developing agriculture. So whatever fiscal policy is going to be, whatever changes in fiscal policy that we are going to undertake, it will have to come, we have to examine it we have to think it through properly. So yung mga pabigla-bigla na tinataas, binababa, hindi natin magagawa yun, dahil kung gawin natin yan, it will if there are too many moving parts, you cannot anticipate what will happen. And so we have to be careful, and there are many variables. Move the variables one by one. Huwag mong sasabay-sabay, kasi then you don't know what's happening. We just followed, I guess, the scientific method. So my approach to the fiscal policy, first, is to codify it, to make it simpler, to make it more understandable, number one. Secondly, is to reduce as much of the tax collections from those who are suffering from the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic. That means MSMEs, agricultural sector, transport, yung mga ganon. So babawasan natin. Let's hope we can raise funds in another area and use it there. Then again, very important to me is the distribution of wealth issue. So that will also be part of the thinking that will obtain when we talk about fiscal policy. So it's difficult for me at this point. I'm trying to answer your question, but it's difficult for me to answer your question because I cannot talk about specifics, because they will all be part of a larger economic plan. Of course, but the general principle that we will apply is to give opportunities to those that have suffered, maybe by lightening the tax liabilities that they are required to pay. But again, we have to see what the effect will be for the rest of the economy, for other sectors of the economy. So, yes, fiscal policy is going to, monetary policy is also, now that you mentioned monetary policy is also, I was just watching the news before I came here, marami na talaga nagtataas ng interest rate around the country. So, this is what we were talking with BSP President Ben Jokno, if we're going to raise interest rates, if our investment rating will change, kung bababa ba yan, or can we do something to keep it? But he seems optimistic, and to an extent, I share his optimism, and I think we can do it. But we have to be very, very, how do you say? We have to be very circumspect about making sudden changes, because as we've seen, all of these sudden changes have had some unintended consequences in other parts of the, hindi mo na maakalain, may pumuntok doon kasi dito may ginawa ka rito. Like I said, the economy is a living thing, and it's always a work in progress. So we'll continue to examine all of that.
Yeah. Sir, very crucial in revenue generation are the bureaus of customs and internal revenue. My first question, meron na po ba kayong napili o nakausap? Na
Well, let me put it this way, dami kong aplikante for customs and BIR. But you're right, critical yan. We have to increase our collections both in the BIR, both in customs. Sa customs, marami nag-advise sa atin, marami naman na maaring gawin. We are talking about buying equipment, the ADB, the World Bank has given us much equipment di masyadong nagagamit. We have to increase that. Also, we have to develop the ports so that the business grows, and from that growth in trade, in shipping, the collections of government will increase. But the efficiency of the Bureau of Customs has to be really seen too. Hindi naman mangyayari yan na nag-iisa. And we've all heard the horror stories about but structurally we have to approach it in a new way, and say that the main job of the Bureau of Customs is to increase their collection through ease of doing business, even just the documentation, and then of course all this new equipment that we can to be able to handle larger increases in volume. So that I think is how we are going to head when it comes to customs. And yes, I have had many applications to head the Bureau of Customs, but I'm sure we will find the right people. I have a fairly good idea of who has